Hey, it's Amy. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is the first in my new mini-series called Women Run the World. Forgive the pun. In these videos, I will be tackling different issues and topics related to women and running. If there's any topics you'd like to see me cover in these videos, please tell me in a comment below. Today I'm diving in why women are doing so well in the marathon, especially women over their 30s or 40s as well. I take a brief look at the history of women running, especially in regards to the marathon. I also ask the questions of why women are doing so well in the marathon, especially in their 30s and sometimes 40s, as well as the ultramarathon. And in ultramarathons, why women are winning the whole thing even faster than the men. But before I cover these topics, please click the subscribe button and the bell icon so you get notified every time I upload a video. So let's talk about women and endurance running. Before we can understand why exactly women are doing so well in the marathon recently and in the ultramarathons, we have to look at the history of women and running marathons. It was a bit shocking to realize that the first time that women were allowed to run the marathon in the Olympics was on August 5th, 1984. If you think about it, that's only 37 years ago. Like, it blows my mind. A lot has changed thankfully since then, but again, not that long ago. In doing research for these videos and reading some books, I was just amazed, and not amazed, but just shocked of how many times women were just shut down. For example, in 1966, when Bobby Gibb or Roberta tried to enter for the Boston Marathon, she got a very polite letter back instead. It stated that women were not physiologically able to run a marathon. I believe she hid in the bush and actually entered in the race unofficially and crossed the finish line. I can't remember exact time, I'll put it up here, but still, she ran the marathon. The Amateur Athletics Union prohibited women from running over 1.5 miles, I believe. So the Boston Marathon organizers couldn't risk the liability of her running because, heaven forbid, women run a marathon. Basically, the thought behind this is that women weren't physically capable of running for longer distances and that it might impact her having a child or just wouldn't be able to hold up to the pressure in training. Thankfully now that we know better than this, but again, not that long ago. Then we see Catherine Switzer enter the Boston Marathon in 1967 using the initials SV Switzer. And if you don't know how that happens, you'll see a famous photo here of someone trying to actually pull her bib off and make her stop running the marathon. However amazing these women were, they weren't actually the first women to officially compete or finish a marathon. In 1926, Violet Percy was the first woman to be acknowledged by the International Association of Athletics Federation. She finished her marathon in a time of 3 hours, 40 minutes, and 22 seconds. Times have changed since then, but again, we have to think about how she was the first woman to be officially recognized and how there wasn't much knowledge about training, and I'm gonna get into that in a little bit. Thankfully, oh my word, in 1972, the Amateur Athletics Union lifted the ban that women could not run farther than 1.5 miles. Fast forward to the Olympic trials for the marathon held in the States in 2020, where over 400 women qualified with a time under 2 hours and 45 minutes. I think now we're just seeing the result of women being allowed to run all lengths of races, not just the marathon, but over 1.5 miles, and it's just really exciting to see. So this takes me to my first question, is why are women running so fast past their 30s and sometimes into their 40s in the marathon? Some of my favorite female marathoners are in their 30s and over their 40s. For example, Des Linden is 27, Sarah Hall is 37, Krista Duchenne is 44, Natasha Wodak is 39, Lindsay Tessier is 43, Melindy Elmore is 40, Steph Bruce is 37, and Alafine Tulimek, who won the marathon trials, is 31. There are so many more women I could have mentioned, and I didn't even touch on ultramarathoners and people who don't run marathons, but it's so cool to see that they're thriving, and age is just not a limit we can put on ourselves anymore. I forget who said this or where I read it, but it really struck a chord with me, and it said, you can't be what you can't see. Of course, some of these women had to be trailblazers and they had no one to be examples for them, but now we see all these women doing these amazing times and coming back from having children, and I think the more we see that, the more we believe, or at least I believe, I can run faster. And again, I don't have to think that I have to give up because I'm over 30 and I'm gonna slow down now. Clearly, that is not the case. I recently listened to a podcast that had Steph Bruce, Alicia Montano, and Sarah Vaughn, and they were talking about motherhood and running. I won't tell you all what they talked about, but it was really interesting as they are all mothers, and they all had each other as an example of coming back after having a child and doing these amazing things. Just hearing these women talk about each other in such just like supportive and just telling each other how their example helped them coming back from having a baby and just knowing that they can still run faster times even having a child and you can be a mother and so on. But just seeing that they had examples to look for and that gave them the courage and just the strength to keep, working towards their goals was really, really inspiring for me. I may not be a mother, but it's just really awesome to hear their stories and just, they can do it then. It really does give example to amateur runners like myself, and I'm sure to many other runners. In the New York Times article called "Why Are American Women Running Faster Than Ever?" it explored the idea of how there were so many women who qualified for the Olympic trials, as I mentioned before in the video. In this article, it talks about a generational change that are allowing women now to run and train more. It quotes one of the trial qualifiers, Starla Garcia, as saying, "More women are allowing themselves to have their own goals outside of their own families or careers. It's such a joyous experience." He goes on to say that it's kind of a luxury that we're able to train so much, and I think so, but I also believe that we're being allowed to train more and that we're again seeing other women running and training, and we're putting more of an emphasis on just taking care of our own bodies. So if we take care of ourselves, we can take care of others even better. I'm not a mother, but I feel like I wouldn't be able to handle if I wasn't, having an outlet of running or some sort of activity. I think that would be able to help me just like balance life. It's now becoming the norm to see females running while they're pregnant or coming back soon after having a baby. It's also cool to see that I think a few years ago that Nike finally came out with a new kind of maternity leave for their female athletes. As I know before, I think because of their contracts they had to do so many races in the year, and if they were pregnant they wouldn't fulfill their contracts. So I'm really cool to see that these sponsors are supporting their athletes even more now, especially female ones. Scientifically speaking, it takes about a decade to fully develop your cardio system. This could be another reason why women are doing even better or just keep kind of improving well past their 30s. Even when I did my first marathon when I was 28, I feel like I'm just getting stronger since then, and I still have so many more races left in my legs. I think there's also been a lot more research now done for recovery, training, and having more female coaches like Shalane Flanagan, nutrition that has helped female athletes or just athletes in general be able to continue in their sport longer than maybe in the past. The number of muscle fibers doesn't actually decrease until your 50s. I'm not saying that all women in their 30s and 40s are going to keep peaking forever, and there's a lot of other factors that go into it. For example, people who have been running since their early childhood and been really putting their body on a lot of stress, sometimes things will break down and they'll get burnt out, or they've reached everything they wanted to do in the sport and retire, which is completely fine, or they have other family obligations or just don't have the time anymore. So there's a lot of factors that, again, we're probably not seeing all the women that could run this fast right now, but it's just so exciting. I'm very excited about this episode and all the episodes in this mini series. The last question I'm just going to briefly talk about is why women are doing so well in ultramarathon events, even winning the race completely, even over the male runners. I thought this quote by Rosalind Carbon was really interesting, and I'm going to read it to you, and I'll have it on the screen as well. "Social and historical influences remain hugely important factors determining the success of female athletes. What if at 26.2 miles, a marathon just isn't long enough to give women's physical bodies the upper hand against men's? What if most popular sports are skewed against women because they were designed by men with men's bodies in mind?" This kind of blew my mind because it's true. Men ran these events, and not saying women can't do them because they can, but it was just really interesting. So I wanted to share that quote with you. A few examples of women just crushing the ultramarathon is British runner Jasmine Paris, who became the first woman to win the 260-mile mountain spine race in the UK, finishing the course in 83 hours, 12 minutes, and 23 seconds. I have to look at my notes because I didn't want to mess those numbers up. Wow, it was a long time to move. She smashed the course by 12 hours too. The most mind-blowing thing is that at rest stops, she would express milk because she was still breastfeeding her child. Like, she was literally giving the food to feed her baby while also competing in this crazy ultra endurance event, and she won it too. Mind is blown. And another woman, Katie Wright, beat 40 men and 40 women in winning the Riverhead Backyard Relapse Ultramarathon in New Zealand, running almost non-stop for 30 hours. I can barely handle a marathon. I don't think I could do 30 hours. I don't think I'm built for the ultramarathon, but you never know. So why are women doing so well at ultramarathon events? According to senior lecturer in applied physiology at the Shefflin-Hamlin University, Dr. Nicholas Tiller says that women generally have more slow twitch fibers than men. Interesting. Or a greater distribution of them. The slow twitch fiber muscles, if you don't know, are really suited to long endurance events. They don't tire as quickly as, say, fast twitch muscles, which are mostly predominantly in like sprinters or shorter distance runners. Dr. Tiller also said that men typically have larger muscles, as well as greater maximal powers in strength and aerobic power, which is generally why they're able to kind of beat women in shorter distances and even in the marathon, or just run faster, I mean. He mentions that maybe one of the reasons that women are doing so well in ultra events and doing faster than men is that maximal efforts or maximal power isn't really useful in ultra events. The longer the distance, the less the gap is between men and women. Very interesting. Another study suggests that the difference between men and women kind of boils down to hormonal differences, especially in the ultra marathon events. Again, men are typically faster than women in kind of marathon and lower because they have a bigger heart, so they're able to get more oxygen and blood flow, etc., etc., and also more testosterone, which helps them be, stronger and have more muscle. To just be very, very basic about that, but yeah, that just helps them run faster. Men are also able to store more glycogen in their muscles, which, as I've talked before, is fuel. So the more fuel you have, the less likely you are bonk and be able to run faster and longer. So this fast-acting glycogen, this fuel, is really good in marathon and lower. During long ultra events, men seem to kind of burn out of fuel sooner than women, and they also say that estrogen has something to do with it. There's a whole science behind this. It's really, really fascinating. I could talk way longer about the science behind everything in running, but I just wanted to give you just an idea of why women are excelling in these ultra marathon, ultra events. People also say that women are just more able to kind of deal with the grueling efforts mentally and push themselves through these, I couldn't even imagine doing these events, but it's just really cool to see. And I didn't even list half the women who have just done these amazing events, but yeah, it's so cool to see. It's been so fascinating just looking about the history of women running, and especially in regards to the marathon, and just shocking how recent it's been that we've been allowed to run, because heaven forbid we're too delicate. But anyways, it's just I'm really, really glad that we're able to run the marathon, as that's something that I love doing and I love training for, and I love pushing myself. And I've just met so many amazing other female athletes, and male athletes too, but just really ones that have inspired me to push myself to go faster and just see their examples and see how they can do it, and it just gives me the inspiration to do it as well. There are just so many female athletes I could have mentioned in this video, and my apologies that I didn't cover all of them. I think I could have just spent the whole video just saying their names, but anyways, it's just been really cool doing this research, but also just experiencing and seeing these female athletes being such an example to women all over the world. And you don't have to run these crazy fast times to be an inspiration. You don't know who you have an impact on, and just all we can control is how we handle ourselves and how we approach life, and just the hard work we put in. It's all on us. So I really hope that this has been helpful for you and maybe gives you an inspiration to try something new, try training for something, try anything, and don't put a limit on yourself. If you like this video, tap that thumbs up button. Happy running and happy belated International Women's Day, and I'll see you next time.